welcome to another episode of whatever this is, a Swapcast or something. What's going on? What's up, Tomcat? How you been, bro?
What's going on, dude? How have you been? It's been a while.
It's been a while, right? When was the last time we did it? We did a Swapcast a
Yeah,
few
not
months
too long
ago.
ago. Yeah,
It pissed some people off. We got some butt cheeks tight.
yeah, of course it did. Everyone's offended nowadays, including the truth or conspiracy, community. Every community infights and gets argues with each other about the dumbest stuff.
Yeah, no, we're not here for that. But
No,
but we're gonna be talking about something really fun today. Something that I've talked about on the. I think I talked about on the Patreon one time, and we're gonna be talking about it now. And I'm Juan from the Juan podcast. You can follow me at the Juan podcast, TJOJP. And let me change the background for you because I have my whole background going. Where people can find you? Where can people find you, bro? Over on my
Strange Brew podcast. That's obviously at Strange Brew podcast. Our Instagram got shut down, which is kind of shitty. But it's now up at strangebrew.podcast. But obviously, you can find us anywhere you can find a podcast. Just look up Strange Brew podcast, and you'll see our funky ass design.
Right on. And today we're gonna be talking about familiars, and I'm gonna start it off because I found a lot of different things, a lot of different sources, and for those wondering if they want to learn more, just hit me up. I have 1, 2, 3, 5 or 6 different books that I referenced and a couple academic papers because it kind of sort of got into the witch trials, which I'm not like too intrigued about. But the guy who wrote that paper that I referenced quite a bit called Guardian Spirits or Demonic Pets, the Concept of the Witch's Familiar in Early Modern England from 1530 to 1712. It's by a guy named James A. Serpo. So shout out to that guy. He's from the University of Pennsylvania. And he goes hard in the paint. He goes hard in the paint when it comes to talking about the familiar concept. And he even proposes that it's made up, bro. He even has that idea, which we can talk about here in a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
But proposes the idea that it was a made up concept in order to, of course. And probably my favorite, I'm not going to say favorite account, but the more messed up account that I read was when they would starve the accused witch and she would start to hallucinate because she hadn't ate or drank anything.
Yeah.
And then they would make her admit to whatever they were accusing her of. And then they would feed her. So then she'd wake up the next day. Okay, it's like, well, you're being accused of X, Y, Z. She's like, wait, what? I said that? Like, that's messed up, bro. Like, if you think about it.
It's just like, oh, are you, you don't have a husband? She's a fucking witch, all right? Are you dancing out in the forest naked alone and you're like independent with your sexuality? You're a witch. There's like so many like things of that it's like, some old lady lives in the woods and, she makes at the time what would be modern medicine. She's like concocting potions and healing people or whatever. And then they accuse her of witchcraft. And then,
bada bing, bada boom.
Back then.
So we'll get into it. I have a lot of reading and I'll read some of it because he puts it beautifully and then we can discuss it. So what is a familiar? And I've kind of touched on the subject. So a familiar, and this is crazy, bro. I learned something new today. Spirits that live with, travel with, and assist magicians, sorcerers, and witches. Familiars, spirits attended upon a magician, sorcerer, or witch. The idea probably arose out of that of fetishism. Jeez, fetishes, but not fetish, bro. A fetish, like a fetish. So check it out because this is crazy, right? So fetishism, because this is written in this is an encyclopedia from 1920, so it's written a little bit weird. So
they rub cats on their pussies or something?
No, a fetish is a form of sexual desire in which gratification is strongly linked to a particular object or activity or a part of the body other than the sexual organs. But the second definition of fetish is an inanimate object worshipped for its supposed magical powers or because it is considered to be inhabited by a spirit.
Weird, like some
that's
sort of
weird,
cursed
bro.
object. Like that is weird because we're gonna hopefully soon do a live about cursed objects, and like that shit's fucking weird too. Because then people worship those things, then use them as idols and put them on their mantle, and then like bow to it, especially if it has certain spirits attached to it and stuff like that. It's weird that would be considered what a fetish would be, but I could see that terminology being used back then. It makes sense a little bit.
Let me look up the etymology of fetish to see when it started to pick up that other.
Yeah, weird.
So we
Now
have
it's
the
yeah, you like fucking in a costume and then where you're a dog. That's a fetish.
it's called being a furry, isn't it?
Yeah,
So material object regarded with awe as having mysterious powers or being that representative of a deity that may be worshipped through it. That's
yeah,
1610.
weird.
So it comes from Portuguese fetico, charm, sorcery, allurement, noun as an adjective meaning artificial. The Portuguese adjective is from Latin factitious, made by art, artificial. Well, so it goes on, and then the sexualized version came into, I believe it was 1897. So let me check
Weird.
fetishism.
Because you're technically worshiping in some regard. Like the thing, like people that have really like strong fetishes for stuff where they're consumed by it, right? That's all they think about and do, and that's called mental illness.
So 1897 in a writing of Henry Havelock Ellis. So that was the first time it was in a pure psychosexual sense.
So, yeah, I never knew that.
1801 worship of fetishes from fetish and ism expanded in use by Comet, taking it to denote a general type of primitive religion, animism. Wow. Okay. So we have, and when I read that, I was like, fetish. I'm like, wow, why is it talking about that? So when I started to look into it, I go, okay, so I learned something new today. So we have here, arose that out of fetishism, especially as many familiars were supposed to reside in rings, lockets, and other trinkets worn by the wizard or sorcerer. From Delirio, we learn that these spirits were called by the Greeks paredri, so as being ever assiduously at hand, and by the Latins beside familiares, familiaris, and then he's got some other names.
My familia.
Yeah, so yeah, kind of sort of. Often referred to as spirits or imps, familiars could be acquired from a variety of sources. Many were represented as gifts of the devil, given in return for a promise of allegiance. Others, like Sathan, were obtained from other witches or passed around and shared between groups of witches. Because, dude, they actually had similar names. And I have a chart where this dude, this James guy, he actually shows you charts of like when the cases start to arise of familiars at a certain year, and then what type of names were most familiar or most common. And it's like he's got it broken down by toad, a frog, a ferret,
because
all this
they were
stuff.
saying that that it was like a low ranking demon sometimes that would like show up. It's like the guy that Satan doesn't really like. He gets the coffee for Satan, and then he's like, yeah, you got to go up. This bitch really needs you to be her toad.
So it's like it reminds me of in Hercules, the little two demons that feed Hercules. Is that part of the lore? Is that actually?
I'm sure it is to some extent. Like, but I don't know. You know, Disney, they like to put their spin on everything, but I'm sure it has something. Like, it was mentioned at least one time, and then they just went with it.
Yeah, probably. We have here, so Sathan, so they're essentially, this is talking about the witch trials, but they would pass on familiars from witch to witch. Mm-hmm. Now,
I heard that
a group of witches, like some kind of useful household implement, frequently they just appeared out of nowhere like stray cats, offering their services and demanding to be fed. Familiars also acquired a variety of interesting names, many suggestive of pet names. Sometimes these names were bestowed by the witches themselves, but in other cases the devil assigned a name, or the familiar chose its own name. When communicating with its mistress on such matters, the familiar was occasionally said to speak in a hollow voice.
Yeah, imagine you see like you walk in this bitch's house and the frog's like speaking. She like walk in and she's talking to a toad and be like, all right, get the fuck out of here. I got some pitchforks and some fire ready to go, though.
And she turns around and asks you, "Hey, so Tom, what's your what day were you born? What time were you born at?" That's how you know you gotta. You know, because it's funny because whenever I was looking into this subject and you would YouTube it, right? Because sometimes when I'm not actively looking through books, I will listen to something or a podcast on it. A lot of the things I came across was like these modern day Wicca, Wiccans, New Age, which is cool, right? You can do whatever you like, but I think it's kind of.
I talked to a woman, Wiccan, once, And she said that they go to Ottawa every year and they go to the forest and they dance around naked. And I was like, sounds kind of fun.
Well, my witch friend told me that they sunbathe their assholes because he said if the sun is good on your skin, then it's got to be good where the sun don't shine, right? So he says that they'll sit there and they'll literally spread
Well,
their
they'll do
cheeks.
that yoga pose, whatever it's called, and they stretch their back up and just put their ass in the air.
Yeah, they spread their cheeks, bro, and they just sit there in front of the sun.
After a while, you're stuck like that because you can't.
Can you imagine, bro? You're like in your house chilling, and you look over to your neighbor's backyard. He's just spreading his cheeks like in the sun. Like, what are you doing, bro?
I'm sure that happens in California.
Probably or Portland, some shithole over there. So we have here the idea seems to have emerged in the 13th or 14th century from the idea of fairies or kobolds, the mischievous spirit who could be paid or cajoled into assisting people in various ways. And I know what a kobold is because of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's a mythical sprite having spread in Europe with various spelling including goblin or hobo-goblin, and later taking root and stemming from Germanic mythology. The concept survived into modern times in German folklore. And we have a fairy, fair folk or fairy.
Yeah, the fairy folk shit is crazy, dude. Like them kidnapping kids and stuff like that. Yeah. And that's if your kid was born retarded, if your kid was like mentally handicapped or had some sort of deformity, they would think that it was a changeling and that a fairy came and took the good kid and then replaced it. It's same with even what he just says, kind of like the leprechaun thing, where if you steal his gold, then you have something on him, or he has to do stuff for you. And you kind of have him entrapped in this like
really.
Yeah, that can happen too. It happens in like even the leprechaun horror movies, but that's actually based on like real stuff to do with the leprechauns. Because there's his drunken cousin named the Clergicon, and he'll like steal your wine and stuff like that, and he'll trick you and make you think that he's gonna do stuff for you, and then he'll just steal more and more booze.
Interesting. So a fairy is a type of mythical being or legendary creature found in folklore of multiple European cultures, including Celtic, Slavic, Germanic, English, and French folklore. A form of spirit often described as metaphysical, supernatural, or preternatural. So
if you'd be ever interested, man, the pixie stuff is fucking nuts and a lot darker than people even think it is. Like all that fake stuff is dark.
We have here familiars. It was believed could take the form of animals or birds. And one of the this has to do with what we're going to be talking about a little bit later. Hybrid creatures. So these familiar spirits that weren't like animals, they were just spirits of some sort. And one of my
grotesque creatures of fantasy. That's what I described it as.
What they call it?
Grotesque creature of fantasy.
One of my favorite, which I've talked about before on the channel, is Edward Kelly having a spiritual creature. So about a year after entering into Dee's service, Kelly appeared with an alchemical book, the Voynich manuscript, the Book of Dunstan, and a quantity of red powder, which Kelly claimed he and a certain John Blockley had been led to by a spiritual creature at Northwick Hill. The red powder of projection, so to turn lead into gold.
Oh, that's fucking cool.
Yeah, accounts of Kelly finding the book and the powder in the ruins of Glastonbury Abbey were first published by Elias Ashmole, but are contradicted by these diaries. And then it goes on to say that, but essentially Edward Kelly was led to a gold or something by, and then the lure has changed because I read that he summoned it through the use of the Voynich manuscript, which we know is a book that hasn't been deciphered.
Yeah,
and since it
has all plant medicine stuff in it too, like weird plants and stuff, like, doesn't it? Is that the right? Am I thinking of the right book? Yeah, it's weird plants that maybe we don't even recognize and stuff like that.
Well, one of the interesting parts of reading that actual manuscript, the actual book, is that when people read it, bro, they start to like get dizzy because they say that either invokes something in you or the ink that it's made out of and the pages have like some sort of poison. So you're literally dying as you're reading it. Yeah, bro, it's crazy. So
sneaky.
We have here In the overwhelming majority of trials, especially those in the south of England and the home countries, the familiar was represented as a relatively autonomous being whose function was to serve as the witch's magical agent or emissary in the performance of acts of maleficium, I guess that's how you say it, maleficum, that is harming other people, their livestock, or property by supernatural means. In return for these services, witches provided their familiars with shelter, often in boxes or pots lined with wool, and food, occasionally milk, oats, bread, cheese, cake, or other scraps, but more usually blood sucked from reddish spots or swelling on the witch's own body. In many cases, teams of women were delegated the task of stripping and searching the accused for telltale marks
The devil's mark.
Yeah, during the peak.
She would use her finger. She would use her finger to like have the blood suck or a bump on her body, such as a mole or wart. So the thing would like stick on her fucking wart.
Yeah, I have more on that later. Cause I'm just going through different definitions of a familiar. During the peak of the English witch persecutions in the mid 17th century, the quest for this kind of circumstantial evidence of the existence of familiars became an almost mandatory part of the judicial process. Wow, I cannot speak today. So those are different definitions I found throughout the interwebs, including a few books. And then I'm going to pull up a picture here of this.
Juan, have you seen The Witch?
The movie have I seen?
Yeah.
No.
The 2016 one? Bro, you would like it. It's fucking creepy. It shows very much the mythos and stuff like that of like the time error and how you essentially they would just accuse women of being witches. A family gets secluded and kind of kicked out of their community. You have to live in the woods, and then this baby goes missing, and then it goes like, wild. I watched that shit on mushrooms outside, and it tripped me out. And I was like, should I have messed with the Ouija board when I was young? And I like was thinking about how far back like the dark arts and black magic actually goes, and it was a trippy thing to watch on mushrooms. I actually think you would like it, especially after this episode. Go check it out. It's a good movie. Robert Eggers does a good job.
You said Witch 2016?
The Witch, yeah. It's a phenomenal movie. Like, I think it's actually really well done. And the ambience of it, we did a whole episode on it just because of the fact that it's so creepy and eerie.
Mm-hmm.
You like it.
So this is a witch keeping her familiars in a box and feeding them. Nothing to see here. Just some
one's like a lizard. Oh, frog.
And some weird looking thing there. So moving along, because I've talked about talismans and amulets a little bit on the show before. One of the interesting parts I wanted to do, I put here amulet versus talisman, because I do believe that the familiar, it can inhabit certain things, including the body of, it's a spirit. So it can either inhabit an inanimate object, how we talked about fetishism, or it can inhabit an animal or come through as a form of an animal in order to go to places where humans can't go, right? The black cat was attributed to the witch, and the black dog was attributed to the wizard or the sorcerer or the warlock, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, bro, let me see here real quick. Let me.
Well, if you think about even like stupid as it is, Harry Potter, and how like Sirius Black changes into a dog, like that's part of it too, like a black dog. And it's like they obviously drip feed this in certain movies that have to do with witchcraft or witchery stuff. And that's a good example.
So here we have interesting, because Donald Trump is in the news at the moment, and every wizard has their black dog. Well, I googled Donald Trump and dogs, and apparently Donald Trump hates dogs, but he's got a picture with none other than a black dog, and it's a shaggy black dog, which plays a role into what we're going to be talking about. So
he says he hates dogs.
It says he hates dogs. I don't want to get lost in the sauce with this, but
no.
We'll pull it up here in a little bit when we start talking about dogs. I have a lot on dogs, like a lot. Okay. So amulets, the charm, amulet, or mascot is, of course, directly derived from the conception of fetish. So again, we have this inanimate object that is inhabited by a spirit. You have the jinn and the genie in a bottle.
Yes.
Which was believed by savage and semi-barbarous people to contain a spirit. Amulets may be said to be of two classes: those which are worn as one, fetishes, that is the dwelling place of a spiritual entities who are active on the behalf of the wearer, or two, mascots to ward off bad luck or such influences as the evil eye. And we have, universally speaking, stones, teeth, claws, shells, coral, and symbolic emblems are favored amulets. The reason for the wearing of these is exceedingly difficult to arrive at, but a kind of doctrine of correspondences may be at the root of the belief. The idea that like produces like, or that an effect resembles its cause. And this is talking about sympathetic magic. So in a sympathetic magical way, if you have this amulet of a deity or a spirit, you are able to interact with it in some sort of way. Now, a talisman,
sympathy for the demon, right? You're like,
well, it makes, so you have Solomon with his ring,
yeah,
and how he was able to control the jinn over, with a sigil. Yeah. And you have Solomon's keys. You have John Dee actually had a ring called the Pele. So early in the scrying experiments with Kelly, Dee was instructed by Michael to make a ring bearing the name Pele, which is the name of God, meaning a worker of miracles or causing wonders.
Or something.
And although Dee is told that without this thou shalt do nothing, there is no evidence that the ring was ever made. And there is the most curious statement by Michael that he tells him, like, yo, I was there when I gave Solomon the ring. Like, I was the one. That's a whole other episode. But again, just this connection. And we have a talisman, which is an inanimate object which is supposed to possess a supernatural capacity of conferring benefits or powers in contradistinction to the amulet.
So it doesn't have a spirit in it. It just has some sort of magical powers.
Bada bing, bada boom. Because the difference between an amulet and a talisman is talisman uses more of like astrological power. So the power of Mercury.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So when you make it, you're invoking the power of Mercury and water and the moon, et cetera, et cetera. So more astral magic type of thing, astrological magic type. Yeah. So the purpose of which is to ward off evil was usually a disc of metal or stone engraved with astrological or magical figures. So we have the idea of sigil magic there, where the sigil holds some sort of power. And yeah, do you have anything to add on that before I move on to the origins of the familiar?
No, it's just like you see that in a lot of like movies and stuff like that, drip fed stuff about like certain talismans. We did a whole episode about the jinn, and that shit's like crazy because obviously it's related to these things of these beings being trapped in some sort of inanimate object, and then you can use them and invoke them to do like the simplest shit or very horrific stuff.
Well, it's like how you were saying with the leprechaun. If you have a piece of it, they say if you learn a demon's name, you're able to have control over it. Well,
I wouldn't trust that.
What?
It's just like, yeah, me and Billy went and we did the Ouija board for that for a documentary out in the graveyard, and it told us to die. And then Billy's like, "Yeah, I'm done." yeah. Like it took a while, and it was cold, and usually you have to let it kind of warm up. You have to like let your energy circulate through your body, supposedly, right? If it holds any validity at all. I've used them many times, but
hold on, give me a second, bro. I have to open the door for my wife. So all right. So what was I talking about?
Well, like the leprechaun stuff, essentially like if you hold an object or the demon's name, and I wouldn't want to like respond to it too much, right? Like messing around with the Ouija board is enough for me. Like I would actually be curious about scrying. And I've told, now that we've filmed in a graveyard, I always said that like just because you use a Ouija board in a graveyard does not necessarily mean that there's spirits there, but we're looking at actually haunted locations to film stuff. Because Billy is like skeptical, but also I can tell that he's kind of scared of it. Because I was like, you getting freaked out, and he's like, no, we're not getting responses anymore. And I'm like, when he felt it, he's like, are you fucking touching it? And he's like, no. And he's like, I did feel like it was pulling my hands. And I'm like,
yeah, no, yeah, I'm not messing with any of that, bro. You have fun with that. And
yeah, hopefully I don't get possessed. I feel like I was cursed for a while, so hopefully that doesn't come back. But the more mushrooms I do, the less I worry.
All right, so the origin of this particularly English belief in familiars is obscure. In his 1933 study, Witchcraft and it's not demonism, it's demonianism. What is that even? Demonianism. It's not demonism. Demonianism. C.L. Estrange Ewan conjectured that the idea originated in the pet keeping habits of socially isolated women. So what you were saying, like this poor old lady that just wants to have some company, and she had,
whispers.
but you know why? Because during this time, it was a burden to have like another mouth to feed,
No.
like
Yeah,
to have a
open world
pet.
burdens as much as they are today.
No.
But no, and that's right. You're like, this old lady is like living in the woods, or maybe her husband had died from cholera like fucking 20 years beforehand, and she just wants to be left alone and make her like porridge or whatever the hell they ate back then, and she like keeps a little kitty, call him Whiskers or fucking Tabby
And
or whatever.
the crazy cat lady is a real phenomenon. So I think this is also where we get that from. But T. Gandhi, toxoplasmosis, is a real thing that does affect your brain, and you get that from cats. So
That's the Egyptians, man. We'll get to
yeah,
that.
so we have scorned and shunned by their neighbors. The unhappy women were more inclined to make friends with animals as cat or dog, or more unusual pet as chicken, ferret, rat, or toad. No doubt they were often heard talking to their favorites, and on the principle that birds of a feather flock together, the animals soon came to be looked upon as devils or familiars by the ignorant demonophobes. Demonophobes.
It's weird.
All right.
That's a weird. That's fucking weird. But
So,
like, you would have like, they probably were like throwing water on these women or fucking buckets. You know how they used to like just piss in a bucket and they chuck it out the window? They were probably throwing that at the old ladies and been like get out of here, and like shunning them because like you don't have a husband anymore, you're worthless to society. And then that's why they would recluse to the woods in some cases. And I don't know how they made houses out there. It's like some burly ass fucking woman. She's got jacked arms, just fucking knocking down trees.
did you want her to put you in a headlock, bro?
Yeah, but there were
Yeah, imagine how they smelled back then, bro. Ugh.
yeah, well, they would stink, and like the whole Rapunzel stuff, not Rapunzel, Hansel and Gretel, how like they find this old woman out in the woods, and if you watch The Witch, it's creepy that one character goes out into the woods and there's this like woman that's living out there. It's you have to watch it after this episode because I think it will creep you out. It's
Don't
very
tell me
well
what to do though, bro.
Yeah, I know. No one telling you what to do. Can't enforce things on other people.
So, in Religion and the Decline of Magic, Keith Thomas also acknowledged that many of these apparent familiars were probably companion animals, perhaps even the only friends these lonely old women possessed. Later, he wanted to suggest that the identification of unconventional pets as witches familiars, was an example of the early modern propensity to regard pet keeping itself as morally suspect because, like bestiality, it tended to blur the boundaries between animal and human. So you can't.
How many people are fucking the fucking cats, man? You would kill that shit.
Listen, what? Listen, dude. That part again. There's dark parts of the occult, and I think that that's part of it. Bestiality. I mean, if you hear stories of Crowley and all them doing that type of stuff, I mean, it's part of it. So I could see where that would, because part of the magical practice too is breaking taboos. The more transgression, so the more heinous and dark you are, they believe that it's okay because you're gonna achieve some sort of level of divinity by doing it. So
have you seen Rosemary's Baby, made by that creepy ass pedophile, that boring movie? But
I have not.
So in the end, like, it's not going to spoil for anyone's movies, like how many years old.
Yeah, really old.
At the end, they have this like, she kind of like doesn't really know what's going on the entire like movie. They move in this house, and all these neighbors are fucking weird and suspect. And I believe Roman Polanski knew about stuff that, you know,
that's based on true events, 100%.
Yeah, the dark occultist stuff. And then they kind of like, more or less, I would say, drug her, but they kind of, and she doesn't really know what's going on. She's having memories of like an orgy, and then she essentially like sees like a goat, like demonic creature fucking her and stuff like that. And then she has obviously the devil's baby, or at least that's what they point at. But it's the same thing, and they do it. That's, at least that scene is done very well, where it's creepy. All these weirdos standing around her naked and shit like that. And I believe that stuff probably does happen.
Well, it's ironic that he got arrested for doing what kind of sort of what happened in that movie in real life later on. I mean,
weird ass shit.
So he's a fuck that guy. That guy's a piece of shit.
I know, wherever he's at.
Yeah, well, he can rot, and is he alive still?
Yeah, he moved out of the States. There's a warrant out for his like he is on like a list essentially, but he can't come back in the country.
Yeah,
but he can have his fun in Italy where there is no rating on horror movies. They could literally put a knife going in a vagina and it's all good up there or over there.
So, although superficially plausible, these ideas linking belief in familiars with the phenomenon of pet keeping raise a number of problematical questions. Among them, the fact that familiars are largely absent from all but a few of the voluminous continental narratives on the subject of witchcraft. By 1566, the date of the first well-documented trial in England, periodic outbreaks of the witch persecution had already been in progress for well over a century on the continent of Europe, yet it is difficult to find a single, unequivocal reference to familiars of the English type in all of the continental literature pertaining to witchcraft. And again, he gets into the whole thing of the witch trials, which again, I haven't really done a lot of. I think I talked about it with you one time where it was like the ergot poisoning and all that stuff. So
it goes pretty deep, but mostly it was just people's like overzealous superstition.
Yes.
Like we did the Malleus Maleficarum, which is like the witch's hammer. And essentially it was like a guideline to how you could find a witch. And it was just this fat, like drunken alcoholic dude that probably like, you know, had women shun him and bat him away. And then he's
a virgin.
Like, what? Fucking burn you at a stake. I'm gonna convince everyone else to do it.
You're gonna reject me? Oh, you're a witch. You're a witch, bitch. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
you're gonna reject me? Me? Okay.
Yeah, a lot of angry like beta males that in history that had power, and they're like, you know what? We're gonna exercise this power, baby. So here we are.
I work with a kid that's 19, right? And like we make jokes, and you know he's like wants to find a girlfriend, whatever, like that. And it's just like I said something about how like I've always had like girls like flock to me or whatever like that since I was young. And he's like, I hate guys like,
bro.
And no, I can prove it. And he's like, don't. He's like, I hate guys like you. And I'm like, how can you hate the player, man? Hate the game. Like, it wasn't my fault. I was just charismatic. And I was like, be confident, but not douchey. And I was like, and they'll come to you. They don't want no douchebag confidence, like Andrew Tate kind of shit, where it's just like,
that's kind of like on the border of misogynist, where like,
border,
where you think that abusing women is okay, which is not right. So
it's fucking crazy.
So we have here familiars pertaining. This is not to say, however, that animals played an insignificant part in the continental depictions of witchcraft. The devil was widely reputed to appear to his disciples in the shape of an animal, usually a monstrous dog, cat, goat, or ram, and witches on the continent made a habit of riding or flying to their sabbaths on the back of demons disguised as animals, as well as on pitchforks and broomsticks. And we have,
is that fucking crazy, dude? They would like ride goats like to the Sabbath, like naked.
That sounds lit, bro.
And the thing is, there's a witch back in folklore called the Baba Yaga, and she used to ride, you know, like a mortal and a pestle, like the stuff that you break up medicine in.
Yeah.
Story's crazy. We did a whole episode. It's nuts because like she would like use that. She would ride like a giant mortar, like the handle part. It was fucking weird. And she also had a house that had chicken legs, and the house could walk and move from place to place.
Whoa, that's trippy.
It's fucking weird, dude. Some trippy folklore. I'm like, where do you guys get this shit from?
We have continental witches were also accredited with shape-shifting, the ability to transform both themselves and others into animals when occasion demanded. Two of these manifestations, the devil appearing in animal form and the various instances of shape-shifting by witches, also made occasional appearances in English trials.
Have you seen the Witches, the movie where they turn the kids into like mice or rats or whatever? The original,
like Disney type of thing where they were. Yeah.
The original is creepy because like it's all these like women at this like this meeting or whatever. They come every year, and then this kid is staying in the hotel, and he walks in them as they're like doing their transformation. When I was a kid, it's kind of shimmy because if you look up the witches and their witch, like what they look like, it's frightening looking for like the original. Like creepy long noses, like no hair. If you can bring it up on screen, do it because it's fucking creepy.
The witches, the original, you said?
Yeah.
What year?
It's 1990s.
The witches?
Yes. If you bring up the image of like them as the transformation, it's fucking like creepy.
Oh, that's creepy, bro.
Isn't it? See, look at this shit. Like, fucking, that's how I always picture witches. And they made them like sexy. And like, that shit is frightening. Like, look at that. Like, holy shit.
Wow.
And she
Okay.
turns the boy into a rat. It's the same. Like, that movie is actually fairly good at showing how they would use familiars, actually. I'm a big
So
guy.
we have, although it has its own distinctive elements, the description of the witch's familiar at Saint Osith is reasonably typical of accounts found throughout the English witch trial literature of the late 16th and 17th centuries. Although familiars rarely appeared as odd-looking people, the vast majority of those were described manifested themselves as commonplace animals, usually creatures no bigger than a dog, and often much smaller in the case of insects such as flies, bees, or moths. Occasionally, the same familiar could appear in a variety of guise. Elizabeth Frances Familiar Sathan, a key figure in the famous 1566 trial, appeared first in the likeness of a white spotted cat, but later transformed himself into a toad and later still into a dog with horns on his head.
Okay, if I saw that, I'd be like, that's like a little bit weird, lady. Why should a dog have horns?
And bro, I'm not gonna say this on air, but I found this this article that talks about. I'm gonna pull it up here. So it says a witch and her, and that's not the word, but
what weird.
That word, niggets, means insects or little bugs or something. So
how weird.
Yeah, and this talks about like the witches.
Oh, that's cool. I feel like I've seen this. What book is this? Because I've seen this before.
No, so this is from Superstition in Essex. It's a folklore. Okay. I don't know what year. What 1916.
Oh, weird. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So the books back then, like them diving into some of the occult stuff and like the folklore shit is like fascinating. Just because it was the way it was written at the time, especially like older books, like early 1900s and stuff like that.
Mr. V. Oh, what are niggets? Miss C. Why, those creepy crawly things that witches keep all over them. She was sitting down with her niggets all around her, feeding them with little bits of grass on top.
Wow. What the fuck?
So Mr. V some surmises that a nigget is a kind of familiar spirit. Fancy such things going on 40 miles from London. So that's the Times from September 1915.
Wow. So crazy. Well, like I feel like you could see like a witch with like a little like a fucking grasshopper on her shoulder or some shit. And you're like, okay, like because the insect thing is something I didn't know was actually used as a familiar because like I don't know, it would like if you used a fly to be a fly in the wall. You know, that expression, because like if you were a witch and you could use a fly to like go in and say, because they always accuse people during like the time of kings, where we still have a monarchy, which is weird, but and they would accuse witches of trying to like overthrow the king or kill the king or whatever, right? So if you were able, and this did exist, to have like some fly and know about the king's darkest secrets, you might be able to use it against him. Like, you know, he's got little boys in the chamber or some shit.
Yeah. So let me read this and show this graph, the one that I was telling you about. Let me get the right screen on here. So we have here, no, not wrong screen. those are my notes. I got 5 screens, so please bear with me. There we go. That's the right screen. Here we go. So the possibility.
Crazy.
Made up concept of the elites, I put. The possibility that the familiar was purely a product of English judiciaries, and excuse me, some people make fun of my pronunciations, but English is not my first language, so how
English
does it feel
is my first language, and we pronounce it wrong all the time. It's all fine.
So the possibility that the familiar was purely a product of English judiciaries.
I don't know if anyone could say that word.
To create a homegrown legal definition of witchcraft also seems unlikely. Although a series of acts against witchcraft, conjuration, and sorcery were passed during the reigns of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, none of the relevant legal statutes mentions anything resembling a familiar until 1604 Act of James I. That's right, baby. King James. Weird. The one that you know and love, which I've
the Bible.
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, the pretty much he didn't want they wouldn't annul his marriage, so he went off and broke away from the crown and was like, okay, I'm gonna make my own
I'm gonna add
country.
my own things in here.
So the 1604 Act of James I, when it became a felony punishable by death to consult, covenant with, entertain, employ, feed, or reward any evil and wicked spirit to or for any intent or purpose. And he wrote, I've talked about demonology, which is a series of books that he wrote on witchcraft, vampires, werewolves, etc., etc., you name it. Because he was like a crybaby when it came to witchcraft and the occult, and that's why he hated John Dee. So
Makes sense.
So here, familiars, however, appeared regularly in trial evidence and confessions from 1566 onward. So the concept was clearly well established in popular imagination long before it acquired formal legal recognition. And we have here this graph of when you start to see the emergence, the 17th century here, 1640s.
It's crazy because after like the medieval ages, essentially it just like ramped up, like just after medieval times.
Well,
So
if you think about like religion and the spread of different ideologies, Catholicism, they were all, prevalent. So we have, and this is distribution by decade of 322, and it's funny because yesterday was 322, witchcraft cases involving evidence of familiars or other animal manifestations. The peak during the 1640s is mainly due to the activities of witchfinders Matthew Hopkins and John Stern. So fuck those two guys because they probably killed a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like I will always go back to witches. Like we're gonna eventually do it, and like I will talk about, like I was thinking about, there's a certain one eventually down the road in this episode. I want to get in some of like the ghost and male spirits as familiars. It brings up this witch trial that I didn't really know about, that was like a really prevalent one, the Pendle witch trials. But like I was like, it fascinates me of essentially what really drove these people to commit these acts, and like a lot of it is just like sexism in some regard, but like it is fucking fascinating. Like why at this certain time in this peak that they had to go out and blame women. And what we're like, you were reading all this, I was thinking, okay, instead of burning them, in a weird way, I am surprised because of how many people would die from disease, and there would be stillbirths and all this stuff. I am very surprised they didn't use these women. They did believe they were possessed by the devil, whatever, right? But if they didn't or whatever, or they could use them somehow, I'm surprised they didn't use them as some sort of like I don't even know the word for this, but use them to impregnate and like birth kids. But then they probably think the devil will be birthed by them. But I feel like if you kill all these women that have the potential to have kids after you have a wife that dies in birth or whatever, because that happens so often, then you're cutting down the population of women. Look what happens in China and shit like that. Like there's so many men and too many women, where most of them just all the men have to buy sex dolls, like real life sex doll shit, because they can never get a woman. And then they send it back to the store and it's all stabbed up and stuff for some fucking strange reason.
So I don't agree with you on that, because I don't think that was a thing back then during this time. Or maybe after the plague, right? Like,
yeah,
what was the
I'm saying, like, why, like, and I don't think they were doing this, but I'm asking, like, why? Because if you burn and kill and
why burn a perfectly good woman?
Yeah, why would you? Like, especially because people would die during childbirth. Like, it would just be so often that people would die, like, just every day. Not well, it happens all the time today, but like just the simplest little things you would die from. You get a little cut in your hand, and then the guy shows up dead the next day.
So the Black Death was a bubonic plague pandemic occurring in Western Eurasia and North Africa from 1346 to 1353. So it killed 75 to 200 million people, peaking in Europe from 47 to 51 in the 14th century.
There's a theory that all the aliens created every disease that they use it for their own nefarious purposes.
That's crazy, bro. So yeah, I don't think that was like an idea.
I don't know why I had that thought, that I'm like, you're getting rid of too many women. What if you need to have kids and keep the population?
Gotta save the women. That's good, bro. That's good. So we have here the frequency with which different animals are represented in trial evidence for the period of 1530 to 1705. Categories represented fewer than 6 times in total are omitted. And it's pretty much how many times either the bees, wasps, hornets were talked about, wild birds, domesticated fowl, cat, cow, dog, ferret, fly, mole, mouse, rabbit, rat, snail, toad, and non-descriptive, and that went up for whatever reason. So
Hmm.
we have here also, I'm going to bring up the different names that they would be attributed to these familiars too, because that was also a thing, bro. The names given to familiars in English witch trials. And this, again, this goes back to this Hopkins and Stern guy and then other trials.
Tomboy.
Tomboy, bro. Look at you, Tommy boy.
What? Fucking weird.
Hangman and Jacob, Holt, Newis, Tissy, Mouse, Bessie, Beast, Germany, and that's cats. These are all cat names. Sathan, which I mean it's like Satan, right? Jenny, Titty,
What?
Titty, right? That's Titty, right? Titty.
Where are you looking at?
So right here, Titty.
You weird. Titty.
So, Jack times 2. I don't know. Jack, I guess. Robin, Will, Tib, Cat, Pussy, Gib, Puppet, Giles, Dick, Jude, Bess, Ingus, Philly, Dick. Russell. So then we have dogs.
I'm gonna call my cat Dick. You're like, give me your fucking dick.
A lot of Satan, bro. So dogs also named Satan or Sucking.
A lot too many Toms. Sucking?
I name it Sucking Dick.
Yeah, why would that's a weird thing to name your fucking dog. Sucking, come over here. I need a good sucking.
Vinegar Tom, James, Elemanzer, Pretty, Lily.
Tom, that's not cool, bro.
We have Richard and John, so Dick and John. You can got Satan again. Toads, Satan,
yeah,
Sathan, Great Browning and Little Browning, Bonnie, Bajeen, Tom.
How long am my name existed for?
Tom, bro. These Toms, they're all familiars.
Sweet? Question mark. It's sweat, but sweet.
So we have
Collins. I'm just joking. The rat.
Poultry. We have moles. Hissy, his Tom. So miscellaneous.
Tom is everywhere.
Jeffrey, Peter, Sakar. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different names that they were given to these things. But you got to understand that, bro, a lot of these things were being said.
That's fucking funny.
Or being said under torture, and these poor ladies were probably
little chick, just like screaming shit. Like I would like it's me. I want to go through torture methods. Like that's a plan eventually on Stories Your Podcast is like to go through like we done like the worst ways to die, which was hilarious. But like I want to get into like some of the torture method shit because some of them are fucking crazy. They put your like balls in a fucking vice grip and like squeeze them slowly and shit. Fuck.
Little Dick,
screaming that shit.
Oh man. Oh. Yeah, they were just like putting whatever. Richard. Yeah. What else? What? John. Like, okay, we got it.
Because they did this. They used to like drown witches and then be like, if she comes out of the water and she flies away, she's a fucking witch. But if she doesn't come up, she's innocent. And it's like they never. They're just like, all right, they're waiting. Like it's like 5 minutes later. Like, she's not a witch. We fucked up again.
I don't think she's coming back up.
Yeah.
What did she say? She named her from a Little Dick? Yeah, I don't know about that. She was a liar. So those are some names. And then I have here vampire pets, right? Perhaps the weirdest characteristic of familiars and the strongest indication that they were other than mere pets was their habit of drinking or sucking their owner's blood. Not what you thought. So in the introduction of his 1933 survey, Ewan seems content to give credence to the notion that early modern witches actually allowed their pets to drink their blood. There is nothing, and this is quote, there is nothing incredible in the fact that human beings trained or permitted animals to suck or lick their blood. Much more horrible forms of bestiality are known to the psychopathist and the criminal jurisprudent.
So when I cut my wrist and I let my dog lick it, that's bestiality?
According to this guy in 1933. So such a literal interpretation of the evidence, however, seems unjustified. So these guys were pretty hardcore when it came to their beliefs, because I mean, you got to understand they were very religious at this time. Yeah. So an examination of the trial evidence and chronological sequence suggests that the whole idea of blood-sucking familiar evolved from the older and simpler concept of rewarding or sealing a pact with a helpful spirit with a drop of one's own blood. As early as 1510, a teacher called John Stewart, who was accused of conjuring spirits for the purpose of detecting buried treasure, denied giving his blood to spirits in the form of bumblebees. Can you imagine you're in a field somewhere and like there's a bumblebee right next to you and you go, "Oh, he's a sorcerer." It's like, "Bro, get away from me." Like it's just like
you see this guy in the field and he's got bees all over him stinging him and he's like, "They're all my children now."
So he's like swatting at a bee and they're like, "Oh, look at him. He's controlling that bee. He's demonic."
Yeah.
So John Walsh, the cunning man of Netherbury in Dorset, admitted in 1566 to employing a familiar that appeared to him in the form of either a dog or a pigeon, and which helped him to locate lost or stolen objects. Upon receiving this familiar, he gave it 1 drop of his blood. Which
can I say something quickly about the blood sucking shit?
Yeah.
So they would do it either from their finger or like a bumper wart, which is disgusting, right? But that witch hunter, the Matthew Hopkins dude, believed that witches carried a third nipple, or some sort of marked out prove she was a witch. I just want to bring this kid up because it's fucking funny. I went to school with this kid called Matthew Nichols. He had a third nipple. He was a fucking warlock, but we used to call him Matthew Nipples. He probably hated his life for a long time. Like he's the one that told us, and then it went this ongoing joke. And I was like, and I bet you he was a warlock, and he would bring a rat to school and let suck on his third nipple.
Really?
That part's not real, but
that's
it is one.
So here, eat, you little bastard. Yeah.
So, yeah, we put it under his shirt. Fucking, what's this guy doing back in class?
This guy, John Walsh, right? He was being led to stolen objects and lost or stolen objects, so he would give blood, allegedly, according to these guys. And then at her trial, the same date, Elizabeth Francis testified to her awarding Sathan with a drop of blood every time he did anything for her, which, and this is a quote, which she gave him by pricking herself sometimes in one place and then in another, and where she pricked herself, there remained a spot, which was still to be seen, unquote. At another well-published trial of 4 witches at Windsor in 1579, one accused of feeding a toad familiar with blood, which she caused to issue from her own flank. Another was said to have a black cat familiar called Jill, and she daily feedeth it with milk mingled with her own blood. The third fed a kitten familiar called Jenny with the crumbs of bread and her own blood. So point being that they're doing stuff with their blood, allegedly.
Suck it on your fucking wart on your face or some shit like that. Jesus Christ.
Baby, that feels good. Yeah, go ahead and do it. So the first recorded mention of blood sucking is from Ursula Kemp's 1582. Of course, her
name is Ursula.
1582 trial, when she confesses to allowing her toad familiar Pagine to suck blood from one place on her thigh. So, and then this is how you talked about how they would search for like this, and they called it a supernumerary nipple or any accessory protuberance on the body that could be considered as a site of the familiar's recent get naked.
Whatever.
I'm not gonna say that word.
Show me your titties. And he's like groping her these tits. I don't know. There's something about these tits. Do I feel a third? Let me get these are just fucking perverts, man. Show me those.
Yeah, no, 100. Yeah, that was also probably like another thing. Like these guys in power.
Naked. You know what? I want to know a gross thought I had. I was like, do you think
I probably don't want to hear it.
Blood? It's like their time of the month. It was kind of secret, right? Because their time of the month, they would like just feed the thing period blood, shove up their vagina, and then fucking the toad would get magical powers and become their familiar.
So toads is a whole other. Oh man, hold on. So they also checked for hemorrhoids. Okay, all right. So toads.
Your asshole.
Toads. Speaking of sunning your asshole at the beginning, right? It's like, that's a witch. So toads. One of the things I found weird, because some other animals were more what they called. Let me see if I can find it here. They were treated with indulgence and fondness because they were little cute toads, right? So they would hold it near and dear. But toads were, for some reason, held at a higher regard. Now, there is the suggestion that it was bufo toads that they were more prevalent in this area and that there would be, the familiars. But if you know anything about bufo toads, is the one that you can get 5-MeO DMT, the 5-MeO.
What? That's the toad you can lick, eh? And it'll get you all fucked up?
Yes. Well, that's the thing. It's a toxin, but in shamanic religions, what they do is they take the toad and they rub it on a piece of glass, and they're supposed to secrete this toxin, and they let it dry. They scrape it off the glass, and then they snuff it or they smoke it or something.
How many times they had to do that before they figured out that's the way you're going to get high? Before, like, row of dead guys that are just licking the toad.
No, right here. And knew how to obtain by striking toads with sticks until they puffed themselves up and extruded venom. So don't go around beating toads with sticks. That's bad. Don't do animal abuse, okay? But that's one of the ways. Get me
high, though?
Well, that's a whole other thing. But yes, lick the toad, the bufo toad, which is here in Florida as well, as part of that. So
you won't die from doing the snorting it, right? Or licking it, you might die though, right?
I don't know. There's a difference between venom and poison. So, I think you can ingest it and you'll be all right. I
tried any psychedelic once.
So check this out. So this is a picture of these Matthew Hopkins witch finder general. This guy took his job very seriously, bro. Look at him.
Boots.
Vinegar Tom. Look at this. Newy. Weird. Sugar. Blah blah blah.
It was like a weird fucking like cow creature thing, and there's like one that's like it looks like a rabbit, but it's
my imp names are, and then there was just
imps. Fucking weird. It's pioneer looking fuck, and like, oh man, you have to watch The Witch because like there's a lot of stuff that alludes to what we're talking about.
So we have hybrid creatures, right? Belief in the spiritual origins of sickness and misfortune also appears to have been prevalent during this period. The tendency of English trial witnesses either to invent familiars when no pets were available to incriminate, or to attribute supernatural agency to the chance appearances of rats, mice, birds, snails, or insects in the vicinity of accused persons. So again, this guy just minding his own business, walking in a field, swatting away at a bee. He's a demon. He's like, no, I'm allergic to bees, right?
You piece of shit. And then he's got all these like bumps all over him. They're like, fucking a witch. Allergic to bees, man.
So we have reveals a widespread popular superstition regarding the existence of malevolent supernatural beings or spirits that assisted or represented witches in their magic, and preferentially. I know I'm saying this wrong.
Get for reading stuff that was written in the 1600s.
No, this is what year was this written in? No, so this is like academic, bro. Yeah. This is written in 2002, but this guy's a scholar, so he's using some big words, bigger than.
Just make myself look smart.
Adopted the physical form of animals while doing so. The fact that these beings were usually referred to as imps, literally graphs, also indicates some ambiguity in the popular mind concerning whether such creatures existed independently of the witch or alien offshoots of their own persona. So this is where we get into were animals, because they're talking about this being a literal thing from the witch itself that she either gave birth to as a demonic child or otherwise. So
I like the Jersey Devil, man, because like the mother
yes,
birthed the fucking like the crazy devil creature flew out of her vagina.
So we have such ideas, according to anthropologists, are nearly universal among shamanistic cultures throughout the world. And one example I'm going to give is the peoples living in Mexican province of Chiapas believe that everybody possesses a soul animal, chanu, that exists independently of the body and in some senses on a different supernatural plane, but which is nevertheless indistinguishable from a real animal, which I thought that was crazy, because if you think about the skinwalker and how it's like this spirit, and then like right now a really big thing is Dogman. And like Dogman sighting.
Michigan Dogman shit is fucking wild, dude.
Yeah. And like, bro, in Tennessee.
Like phone calls of people freaking out.
Yeah.
So fucking weird. So I was going to ask sometime during this episode, what would your familiar be? What familiar would you want?
A sloth.
I actually like sloths too. I was just thinking about this today. I was listening to episode with the Joe Rogan one with Michael Malice or whatever, and they talked about it. He saw a sloth in a pet store, and he's like, "How the fuck does that thing have like what? How do they have a fucking sloth?" It's like the states, like because obviously you guys have so many more exotic animals. And I remember in grade 6, I did a whole presentation about sloths because I was like, these things are fucking awesome. They're lazy and have sharp ass claws.
They're super soft.
I would say a wolf is one of mine. Like a wolf can do my fucking bidding, and then I can call its homies.
You're just a fucking sorcerer, bro.
Yeah.
So the Chanul are assigned to each person at birth by the celestial powers. And so again, this thing, and I really thought it was cool because it's this thing that exists on a supernatural plane. If you think, I think that the dog man is some sort of vessel that people, the elites, right, jump into, and they do their shenanigans or whatever it is. So
I wonder if that's the David Berkowitz connection, because if they were like somehow possessing the dog to talk to him.
So I mean, we'll get into that because I got dogs next, and I got a whole bunch of shit on dogs. So in West Africa, the Banyang people of West Cameroon hold that people have the ability to transform themselves into or to send out as extensions of themselves were animals called babu, which in this form are possessed of supernatural power. So again, this idea of a dog man or even a Bigfoot. I've heard stories of witches having Bigfoots. Multiple Bigfoots.
I want to ride on his shoulders, man.
Just stroke his hair, bro. Just like Nicolas Cage looking fucking.
Give him a cigarette, like reach around, like, hey, you want
to So here we go. Although occasional stories are told of people actually experiencing bodily transformations into animals, and that's one of the things about shamans. Like they literally take the spirit form of whatever is attacking people in this other realm, right?
See, and that's what's crazy too, because I could imagine, like, I do a lot of mushrooms. I'm gonna do a big dose tomorrow because I'm off, and like I could, like, I don't know, like I always, like, I can decipher my trips to an extent, but like I could imagine if you were really convinced, if I saw someone shapeshift on mushrooms, I'd be convinced that it actually happened in some duality.
Well, lycanthropy, bro, like the actual werewolf. Like, I mean, if you think about that concept,
that's crazy.
Like that movie, what's that movie? The one where the dude he's got Patricia as like one of his. I'm sure you've seen the movie. You know what I'm talking about?
Underworld? That's not it, but they have.
No, the bald guy, and let me look.
Because lycanthrope is like one of the main terms, because that's where it came from.
So the movie too. Let me see here. Patricia. It's a meme. It's like, oh, that wasn't her. That was Patricia. It's a bald guy. Yo, is there a fly in my room?
I hear that little buzz too.
You hear it?
Yeah.
It's a familiar.
It might be your mic, right? Because you have the very expensive mic, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not that expensive. Yeah, sure. So anyways, this movie where this guy literally transforms his body into whatever he's thinking about.
Are you? Oh, weird. I'm like, at first I got that.
It's a superhero movie, bro. Damn. Now I gotta know what movie it is, bro.
Is it recent?
Bruce Willis. No. There's
two parts. Are you talking about The League of Gentlemen?
No, I'm not talking about The League. It's got to do with that movie, though, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just shout out American Werewolf in London.
Split.
Oh yeah, because he does, like, in his mind at least, or what he thinks.
So there's that scene where he like starts running on the ground while he's using his mind to transform his body, which is kind of like sort of Kundalini if you really think about it. Where you invoke, I think that's magic, where you invoke a biological effect to yourself by believing it.
Yeah, I could see that, where you almost get these almost like superpowers by like invoking something from another realm, maybe, and then you have the powers of that said creature or some shit,
So nevertheless, these examples contain some striking echoes of medieval and early modern ideas related to shape-shifting, parallel injury, and spirits, souls adopting to the form of animals, as well as suggesting similar connection between witchcraft or shamanism and the use of an animal alter ego as a magical emissary. And the thing is, okay, so we're talking about familiars in the witchcraft sort of sense, but the idea of a familiar goes back in history. I mean, if you look at like a totem pole, like those are different animals.
Oh,
spirits,
that actually would be an interesting topic. Just the native folklore goes pretty deep. Before you get into dogs, let me get into some stuff, but let me know before you're doing that.
So I have one more thing on demonic infant, question mark.
Oh, I want to know about that.
And then we'll get into the dogs. Because I have a whole bunch of shit on dogs. So overlaid on this core of traditional beliefs and practices was the increasingly widespread habit of keeping animals such as dogs, cats, songbirds, ferrets, squirrels, hares, and so on purely for companionship. Don't you ever fucking keep a pet around these parts. Yo, is there a dragonfly or something in here?
I think it's your mic. Because when you talk, it's happening. But it's so slow.
Test. Testing. Whatever. Who cares? All right.
It's fine.
I think I hear it now. Whatever. Why is it doing that, man? Okay. That's fucking stupid.
It's because the Roadcaster can't fucking handle that fucking expensive mic.
So we have here companionship, a practice that was likely to have been more common among the older, less popular, and more antisocial members of rural English society at the time. So again, these outcasts, older people who you said something earlier where it's like they were also burdens to take care of. There were another mouth to feed, so they're probably outcasted. Or again, they thought that they were some sort of witch or something.
Put them in one of those like carts that are pulled by horses. They have like the bars on them. Just like, drop them in the woods. Like there you go.
So combined together and embellished with the occasional imaginative fabrication, this coincidence of different historical factors produces a sort of composite or hybrid creature, the imp or familiar, a malignant though otherwise commonplace animal with supernatural powers that depended on the witch for care and nourishment in the same way that the pet is dependent on its owner, or a child is dependent on its parent. The comparison with a child seems particularly apt, since the familiar, as it came to be understood in the 17th century, was also a sort of demonic infant. Bam, bam, bam. You have the button?
Oh, yeah, I do actually have it.
Jeez, come on, bro. Not just dependent on the witch, but actually nursing from her in an obscenely distorted inversion of the normal mother-child relationship. This image of the post-menopausal, how dare you have a bodily change, crone giving suck to her demonic animal companion. This grotesque mixing of animal and human categories, reproductive roles, and bodily fluids was virtually tailor-made to provoke horror, revulsion, and sanctimonious, another big word, outrage in the puritanical mind of early modern Englishmen. So, yikes. Okay. And check this out. This is Protestants and Puritans were especially eager to suppress the growling of the beast within and any form of intimacy with domestic animals, whether sexual or maternal, was certain to be viewed as profoundly morally degrading, particularly when in the case it was combined with other lurid abominations such as blood-sucking and diabolism.
So they wouldn't like the Middle East then, right?
The what?
Nothing. I said something bad.
All right, so
fucking, let me get into some shit about the ghost and male spirits as familiars. It's fairly
a succubi.
So there are many kinds of familiar spirits according to witch trial and how when they documented it, and many were in animal form, but there was also ghosts or dead who aided the accused, supposedly. So, for example, Bessie Dunlop of Lynn, accused of witchcraft in Scotland, confessed to having a familiar spirit by the name of Thomas Reed. She claimed that he was a deceased soldier from the area who came to her while she walked near castle ruins. One day, he told her he would help her bring her good fortune in return for her aid in clearing up some of his unfinished business. So the soldier, like dead soldier, said, like, I'll do what you want, but you have to help me finish killing the wife that I already attempted to, but I got killed before it happened. In addition, he took her to Elfland, supposedly quotations, where she met the queen and was promised fortunes. In the Pennell witch trials, the accused witches were forced to confess, and all confessed to having familiar spirits. Anne Whittle, Elias Cat Talks, confessed to having a familiar spirit named Fancy, who showed himself as a man when he manifested in her home in the Pendle Pendle Forest. We can assume that either it looked or dressed fancy for her to call him that. The other Pendle witches claim that familiars claim the same about familiars men and appeared supposed to be in the form of black dogs, which we're going to get to. And familiars appeared obviously as toads and all that stuff. So there was people who claimed to have used like dead, which if you watch even the movie that shitty
It's necromancy essentially is
yeah,
what it is.
It is. And then I would like to dive back into that shit because that shit's like cool and fascinating for what it is. But it is like what is that? Why can't I think of that shitty witch movie? It's actually not that shitty. I enjoy it. Not the second one. With Sarah Jessica Parker. Oh, why am I drawing? Oh, Hocus Pocus. She brings Billy back from the dead, and he's like a zombie, and he has to do her bidding. Like that's like the same kind of fucking thing. So
we have dogs, a man's best friend? ? Dog lovers notwithstanding, a man's best friend has not always enjoyed a very desirable reputation. On the contrary, the dog has been suspect of aiding and abetting the arch enemy, of providing him with a form in which to circulate among men, of guarding the underworld, of calling off men to the realm of the dead, of haunting bridges and roads to obstruct men's way, or to lead them astray, of following night travelers, often frightening them to death. And then I got this stuff from, there's another paper that I got. A man and, no, not that one. So The Devil in Dog Form by Barbara Allen Woods, and she goes hard in the paint. And then there's also the place of the dog in superstition is revealed in Latin literature. That's also
that sounds fun. I have an episode written that I want because Billy loves dogs. One of my co-hosts, and I want to get into. I have like a whole thing about ghost animals and all these people that like are haunted, which is always an interesting thing. Of like, yeah, people have unfinished business or their souls get trapped here in some sort of purgatory or whatever it may be. So why would fucking animals?
No. But so you mentioned that, right? The souls. Check this out. So one of the things that I'll get to it here in a second. So a dog's associated with the kingdom of the dead and consequently with the devil. Very likely goes back to Indo-European period. The Greeks had Cerberus and Garmer from the Germanic hellhound. Between the Vedic sons of Sarama, the dog messengers of death, Odin had 2 wolves, which later become dogs. The Greeks and Romans associated dogs with Hecate, and that's the goddess of infernal regions and of witchcraft. The Egyptians considered the dog an animal of the underworld. Anubis had the dog head. Isis rode on a dog. And we have
they also
here...
had Wepawat. It's an Egyptian god dog thing.
Oh, really? Is that the one with the crocodile head?
I think so. The Wepawat. Just weird because the Aztec gods had that too. I want to add this into while you're talking about this. In Ireland and England, ghostly black dogs roam ley lines and haunt cemeteries. So that's fucking weird.
So it says here that the dog should be associated with the devil when Christianity came to Europe and drove the old pagan beliefs underground. So people were just having dogs before that, and then like the Christians were like, "Yo, that's just satanic, bro. You can't have that." So what I wanted to say was the idea of transmigration is in the belief that the dog embodies a restless soul, or anyone who has had either a cruel death. So you have a person who's wicked, such as a cruel nobleman, murder, suicides. I'm getting feedback again from this stupid mic. Thieves, traitors, witches, and all the manner of godless persons. They would come back as dogs.
Weird.
In dogs, yeah. So
there's there's supposed to be that Pendle witch trial. Someone confessed to having a familiar who took the form of a black hound who lamed a man after she requested it of him. I don't know what lamed a man means. He murdered the guy, I guess. I don't know what lamed means back then, but as did James Device and Elizabeth Demdike. Then in 1645, Helen Clark claimed to have met the devil who took the form of a black dog. That's why I was like, when I was looking up this, I was like, the Pendle witch trials sounds pretty fascinating. Even if down the road, if me and you want to cover it on like a Halloween style episode kind of thing, because I would be interested because I've never heard of the Pendle witch trials, like maybe just briefly. But I am fascinated by kind of looking into it and seeing and what it's all about. Because everyone obviously knows the Salem witch trials, and there's certain other ones throughout history in France and stuff like that, but I've never heard of Pendle.
So a black dog familiar is more frequently attributed to the wizard and the black cat to witches. So we have that distinction there. And now I'm going to talk about various dogs throughout history from the 1st century all the way to the 20th century. And I mean, we tied one to the 21st century with Donald Trump and his little black shaggy dog, because that's also very important. So the black dog of Simon Magus. And Simon Magus was the father of all heresies and the creator of the Gnostics. So they tell us that Simon Magus had a great black dog tied in a chain, who if any man came to speak with him who he had no desire to see, was ready to devour him. So he had this dog that would bark at people. And then also his shadow, likewise, he caused still to go on before him, making the people believe that it was the soul of a dead man who still attended him. So he had this, he would send forth a shadow to do stuff. I mean,
it's kind of cool.
Yeah, we have Pope Sylvester II. So Simon Magus was in the 1st century. Pope Sylvester II.
Pope Sylvester would be like, Adrian!
No.
Stupid joke.
Yeah, that was a stupid joke. So we have Pope Sylvester II, which, let me pull up a picture of him here, because this guy, there's pictures of him like talking to demons and stuff.
Did he talk like this? I'm just joking. That fucking Sylvester the cat. I can't talk like that guy.
So this guy, bro, people thought that he had, let's see here, was supposed to have kept the devil in the form of a large black dog, which prophesied. And if we want to get technical, right, this was 11th century. 13th, 14th century was the Knights Templar, I believe. And if you think about the idea of Baphomet and the head of John the Baptist prophesizing, that's a sort of amulet or talisman type of thing, right? Yeah. So the Knights Templar was, I believe 1400. So 1118, active from 1119 to 1312. So yeah, so
I thought it was the 12th
century to 14th. Yeah.
So
we have the black dog of Cornelius Agrippa, right? The black dog of Cornelius Agrippa is among the best known familiars of modern times. History rests on the authority of Paulus Jovius, and it has been copied by Thevet, among others, etc., etc.
If you name it Cornelius, he has to become king.
Agrippa was always accompanied by the devil in the shape of a black dog, and that perceiving the approach of death, he took a collar ornamented with nails supposed in magical inscriptions from the neck of the animal and dismissed him with the memorable words, Abi perdita bestia quam me tutam perdistis. I think that's Latin. So away, cursed beast, through whose agency I must now sink into perdition. And then they said that the dog ran and drowned itself. But then I have some extra stuff on that, because supposedly it had the collar. There was like sigils on the collar, and I'll pull some stuff up for it. So let's see here. This is also attributing to the Agrippa's dog. Attributing occult powers to famous pets was not, however, confined to England. According to the contemporary legend that survived for many centuries, Cornelius Agrippa was a German astrologer, philosopher, and scholar, and he had a dog named Monsieur, who wore a collar decorated with magic symbols. And when Agrippa lay dying, he said to have removed the collar with the words, "Depart, unhappy beast," what I just read. And the dog ran and drowned himself. And in reality, according to Agrippa's own pupil, Joanne Weyer, Monsieur was a thoroughly ordinary dog. I cannot stop wondering, he wrote in 1563, how people of high esteem can talk and write such unadulterated foolishness, unless it be just mean and empty blabber. I knew that black dog very well when I was in Bonn. It was a dog of moderate size, and his name was Monsieur. Quite frequently when Agrippa was out walking, I would accompany him. But then I got some other stuff that supposedly he was having sex with this dog. So,
wow, that's nice.
So we have, that's 15th century.
Pull out the lipstick.
We have Paracelsus, 16th century, and everybody on my podcast knows about Paracelsus. And according to this, Paracelsus was believed to carry a familiar about with him in the hilt of his sword.
Paracelsus?
Yeah, he allegedly had this sword that he carried around with him, and also it's not a dog, but he was said to have a horse the devil's horse, which was a horse that could run forever without getting tired. So, according to the 17th century physician and historian Gabriel Naud, Paracelsus never laid his weapon aside, even when he went to bed, and he often got up in the night and struck it violently against the floor. Frequently, when the night before he was without a penny, he would show a purse full of gold in the morning.
God damn it, he's like fucking up forward, swinging his sword at the fucking ground.
So, although other alchemists attribute these events and other of Paracelsus' feat to the Philosopher's Stone, Naudi thought it was irrational to believe that it was 2 or more doses of... And check this, bro. 2 or more doses of opium, because this dude was high all the time.
Just like fucking Cuckley Crowley.
That Paracelsus never went without, and with which he effected many strange cures. So this dude was
a fucking time on heroin.
He was blasted, bro, all the time. And he was an alchemist, and he was just like, so he's just like banging his sword on the ground.
Time, right? You wouldn't the concept of addiction and being addicted to these drugs, and they would be synthesized differently than what they are today. Obviously, with the advent of like fucking big pharma.
Tell Charlie to shut up.
Like, that's fucking weird. Like, hey,
Charlie, shut up.
That's my demonic dog.
So yeah. we have here the 15th to 16th century. We have Johann George Faust, the original Faust, because it plays into what we're going to talk about here soon. Some of the early reports on the historical Faust testify that Faust had his familiar spirit as a shaggy black dog. Furthermore,
Trump is a time traveler.
So, furthermore, Widman relates that the abbot of some other thing induced Faust to lend him the dog, for the abbot's own familiar had told him that this dog was one of the most powerful spirits. So, we have Prince Rupert, which I learned this recently on an episode that I did with Ronnie Pontiac, where we're talking about his latest book. Even British royalty was not immune in the crusade against witchcraft. In the 17th century, Prince Rupert's dog, Boy, was definitely considered his familiar.
I think he got lazy name.
Boy?
Yeah, Boy, come here. Boy.
So, these people, dude, when the dog was killed, because they attributed it to, let's see here, by attributing all sorts of occult powers to Boy, including prophecy, invisibility, the ability to find lost goods, and the gift of tongues, and the capacity to render himself and his master impenetrable to weapons. So when this dog got killed, bro, they literally wrote songs about it, and they published, let me pull up here, they published like articles and art about it. So check this out.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, bro, these people were
obsessed.
Really like
this dog. This is the Boy dog?
Yeah, the dog that they got Rupert's tears. So they were talking about how he was sad because he. So it's a song, bro, that they wrote.
Can you sing it for me?
No, I don't know how. I can't read that shit. So we have here, sad cavaliers. Rupert invites you all that thou survive to his dog's funeral. Close mourners are the witch, pope, and devil that much lament your later befallen evil. I guess. Lament poor cavaliers, cry, howl, and yelp for the great loss of your malignant whelp. He's dead, no more loss can he. Protect your damnness or get victory. So that's a, bro, that's a song that they would celebrate with. Okay, so
well, if you look at dog. all the stuff, poems, children's stories, fables, everything that Disney based all of its movies off of, most of them, especially the originals, were all like horrible, crazy, fucked up stories.
Yes.
All of them are fucking crazy, like in morbid, and like the whole, like the Cinderella thing, the sisters cut their fucking feet to try to fit in the shoe.
Yeah, I've seen that. So we have here Goethe's Faust from the 19th century. And supposedly Mephisto is introduced in the first form of a black poodle after Faust abandons the idea of unaliving himself. I'm not going to say the word. He goes with his Famulus Wagner for a walk. On their way home, they are joined by the rather strange acting black poodle, which later back in Faust's study reveals itself as the devil. I believe that this is an important feature. Yeah, so a black poodle, and
Yeah.
then it turns out to be the devil. So we
Strange.
have David Berkowitz, because you brought this up right before we started recording, which I completely forgot about because I learned about this recently, actually,
Crazy.
on another podcast I did, and he confessed to all the murders and initially claimed to have been obeying the orders of a demon manifested in the form of a dog belonging to his neighbor
Yeah.
Sam.
A black Labrador Retriever, which is crazy.
So
That's why the son of
Berkowitz,
Sam. It's that whole fucking story goes crazy, dude.
yeah, that's pretty crazy, bro. I did not know that. Like, bro, and
I'm
dude,
so
like,
versed in serial killers, it's plagued in my mind.
I started reading about like all the evidence that they had. Like, there's some messed up, dark, heinous
Weird
stuff.
shit. All those serial killers, there were weird ties to certain serial killers, like who's connected to the hidden hand, like all these weird occultist stuff. Like, it's fucking it's crazy. Eileen Warner's claiming they were using mind control, fucking sonic pressure on her head and stuff. Like, all these serial killers, who knows if they're actually crazy or if they actually
So,
experience these things.
but it's interesting that he picked that, right? And then, but he says here he subsequently admitted that the dog devil story was a hoax. Do you believe that? You believe that was a hoax?
Either he did it for the insanity plea. It's possible. Or he wanted to say when he was in jail eventually and he became a Christian or whatever, he kind of wanted to sound less crazy. So like, because I don't know, like these people truly believe what they say, or truly he was like, okay, what is the easiest thing I can think of? But there's a whole backstory to the dog thing and the son of Sam and where he gets the connection. It's like, how did you even like? Did he may have read a book about the occult.
So, yeah. So during questioning, Berkowitz claimed that his neighbor's dog was one of the reasons that he killed, stating that the dog demanded the blood of pretty young girls. He said that Sam mentioned the first letter was his former neighbor Sam Carr, and that Harvey Carr's black Labrador was possessed by an ancient demon which issued irresistible commands that Berkowitz unalive people.
You know what you should do? You know what you should do, David? You should try not to do a dog voice. You should go and just kill pretty women.
Shaggy? What are you doing, Shaggy? Like,
yeah. Try to do like a Scooby-Doo, like, fucking go kill women. It's fucked up.
Yeah,
So
it's messed
crazy.
up.
Because we haven't reached yet to like, I have this obsession with going backwards first, talking about like serial killers that most people maybe not know about, like in the early like 1900s and all that stuff, and then leading our way to like the 50s and 60s, because then it just ramped up all of a sudden. Maybe it was the lead and everything, but
Dahmer didn't have dogs, but we'll see what. That's all I got on the familiars. And
I just got a couple short things that we could kind of discuss. My familiar is freaking out like usual. Charlie, shut up.
Charlie, shut the fuck up.
Shut up. There is obviously, when we're talking about dogs, there is I just want to mention, Jesus, Charlie. There is the hounds protecting multiple deities, including Hecate, the goddess of witches. Also, Shulat of the Aztec god of death, which is kind of cool. And two large hounds flank the Celtic Germanic goddess Nihalia at the altar, which is fucking trippy. And I just want to go through quickly just the witch's hair. Possibly one of the lesser known of the familiars is the hare. A hare is a large type of rabbit prominent in Europe and parts of North America. There are numerous stories that tell of women shape-shifting into hares to steal things from their neighbors, because you know all women are thieves. Or is to
silly
escape.
Rabbit tricks are for kids.
Yeah, stop stealing shit from my fucking house. Or to escape from danger. A Pennell witch familiar named Tib frequently appeared in hare form. No doubt hares are linked to witchcraft because of their connection to the ancient goddess Esoter, which is like, me and Billy talked about that. We're like one of the only podcasts to do a fucking Easter episode, and we like dived into the whole backstory behind Easter and all this stuff. Hecate is one of them, actually, to name a few, and all these people that kind of like connected to, like, you know, and fuck like a jackrabbit, keep the population going, and all that kind of stuff. When the church sought to convert pagans, they had to make the old beliefs look evil, hence turning sacred animals into witch familiars or evil, because if you study religion, most times they just rip off other shit. And you already mentioned, the lycanthrope, which is kind of cool. These giant beasts like Odin and Apollo and all these Leto and Jared Leto. That's why it's called Leto. This is a weird one. Just to bring this to a close, is the witch's butterfly. It's no wonder witches love butterflies so much. We have long history with these beautiful winged
Called niggets.
Yeah, in the Middle Ages, people believed butterflies stole milk and butter. It's like you're just like scooping, butter in your
That's why
bread.
butters fly. Yeah.
And then you eat butterfly. It's like your butter is flying away, taken by a butterfly, and that's how they got their name, I guess, which is fucking crazy.
Those
So
fucking niggets.
that is fucking weird. Witches also stole milk and butter, so butterflies became a familiar, which is crazy. If that is actually where we get the name butterfly because they thought that the flies were stealing butter, is fucking mind-boggling, fucking crazy. So the other fucking there's other lesser-known familiars: frogs, foxes, we said toads, lizards, blackbirds, weasels, snakes, pigs, and flies. Imagine if a pig has a familiar. Yeah, they're gonna walk that shit around. Some pigs get fucking huge.
Yeah, bro.
At least if you killed somebody, like if you're a witch and you want to get rid of somebody, at least it could go through bone like butter and stuff like that. So there's I don't know, there's some deep shit about this. The witchcraft and folklore stuff always fascinates me. It's just the mindset of back then and why they really did these things. Was it just like misogyny and men not liking women being independent, or was there something deeper to this than what we know?
Like if it was actually for real, you mean? Like
I don't know. There's some weird shit, and like maybe 2 of them were actually real witches, and people saw some crazy demonic stuff, and then they got all spooked out and paranoid, and then they're like every woman that lives in the woods that makes medicine or whatever, and then like also the fact that it could be something like they understand how to use they help someone sleep with valerian root or stuff like that, right? And then they come back and they talk about they heal someone with some sort of herb, and then they're like, no, you have to stick to modern medicine. You have to wipe horse shit on your cut, okay? And then you got to bandage it with alligator skin, okay? It's gonna heal it.
It's funny that it goes from being a shaman or a witch doctor to being demonic later on, right? So
yeah, and it was used as something that was back in the day. They did switch fairly quickly because even certain kings and stuff like that would use familiars, even though they said, and it was like Solomon used supposedly witches to prophesy stuff, even though they were supposed to be against it and it was against God and all this stuff, there would still be kings like that and Catholic priests and all this shit and popes that would use witches to in fortune tellers even though they weren't supposed to. So we're gonna really believe any church or Catholic priests or popes? The trail of open gate buttholes says different.
No, don't say that, bro. So this is fun, bro.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Fun shit. Liked it.
Yeah. Find me at the One-on-One Podcast, any social media platform, tjojp.com, and Patreon, all that good stuff. My links will be in the description. And Tom, you want to plug your stuff?
Yeah, you can www.strangebrewpodcast.com has all of our stuff on it. It'd be a great service. You follow me at strangebrew.podcast on Instagram, considering we lost so many followers. And follow me on YouTube. Strange Brew Podcast is very simple. Let's look that up, and you'll be able to find our shit. I appreciate it. Fuck yeah.
All right, dude. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Stay strange.
Catch you guys in the next one.